Over the last few years, Atma Nirbharta has been the buzzword around the corner and has seen a great impetus from the government. We have started taking steps in the right direction with visible results. Industry is the mainstay in the Atma Nirbharta Abhiyan. To dwell more on the topic, we have amongst us Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, Param Visisht Seva Medal, Yudh Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Honourable Member of UPSC, who will be in conversation with Shri Baba Kalyani, Chairman and MD of Bharat Forge. Lieutenant General Raj Shukla has been a former Army commander with over 4 decades of distinguished service in the Indian Army. An aviator and an accomplished public speaker, the officer has an abiding interest in strategic military affairs. He has published more than 60 articles in journals and prominent dailies. Lieutenant General Raj Shukla is currently a member of Union Public Service Commission. Shri Baba Kalyani is a visionary leader and an entrepreneur. He has been at the helm of affairs of Bharat Forge, the flagship company of Kalyani Group. Bharat Forge has been a pioneer in the indigenization of defense equipment. He is an engineer from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and was awarded the Padma Bhushan for his contributions to trade and industry. May I request the gentleman to kindly take the stage.
All right, friends, the many who have left, the few who have stayed back, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me say that it's a great pleasure to be here in Pune and to be taking stock of Atma Nirbhar Bharat in defense with a gentleman who, if I may say so, has pioneered the practice and thought of Atma Nirbhar Bharat many years before the topic became fashionable in India. Mr. Baba Kalyani, a defense entrepreneur and a visionary in this field. I actually believe that his contributions to India's prospective emergence as a defense powerhouse, I say prospective because it's not happened. The edifice has been kind of laid, but we have some way to go. His contributions have been manifestly profound. So welcome, sir. It's a singular honor to be speaking to you, and thank you very much for your time. Well, it was some summers ago when Mr. Baba Kalyani had come to the Army War College and had delivered a talk. And then he spoke about the salience of the arsenal of democracy. Very frankly, I heard this coinage for the first time from him. And it was based on a book that he presented to us called Freedom Forge, authored by Arthur Herman. And it's basically a story of how in World War II, President Roosevelt picks up the phone, calls William Knudsen, I wonder if I pronounce it right, but William Knudsen, who had distinguished himself at Ford and at General Motors. And because America was faced with such a monumental challenge, he gives him 3 stars, and he's asked to head the war material production capacity of the United States, along with Henry Kaiser, who is into shipbuilding. And the central theme of the book is, and now it's a very popular podcast, Arsenal of Democracy, which is run by Harvard. The theme of the book is that if democracies wish to protect their freedoms and values, they must have a very robust military arsenal. And the second theme is that that arsenal has to be powered by the talent and energy of the private sector. Now, that is exactly where we stand today. Atma Nirbhar Bharat in defense has to be taken forward. The public sector is, of course, there. But given the complexity and great sophistication of the national security challenges we shall see in Ukraine, unless the private sector in India and the startups kick in a big way, I don't think that will happen. And that is really the thread of the conversation which we will have with Mr. Kalyani. Before that, just look at how things are changing and why Atma Nirbhar Bharat in defense is so critical. So just last week, Secretary of Defense, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, talked of a transition from a post-war to a pre-war era. He's virtually saying we are in war times. And look at how it was similarly echoed by the Chief of Defense Staff of NATO, by the Bundeswehr, the German armed forces, are talking of a conflict with Putin in 2025. 2025. Secretary of Defence in UK, similar sentiments. Chief of General Staff, General Patrick Sanders, has called for a mobilization for a citizens' army. Look at how the grammar of foreign policy is changing. Antony Blinken, I heard him 3 days back in a press conference. So the foreign minister, Secretary of State, is saying that I assure you, he's assuring the Ukrainians and the rest of the world, that NATO will produce 220,000 rounds at a cost of $1.2 billion. The foreign minister saying this. So look at how things are changing in the West. And what should worry us that the arsenal of democracies seems to be wanting. The arsenal of non-democracies, Russia, China, Korea, and Iran, is delivering better. North Korea gave more ammunition to Russia than the entire West could give to Ukraine. Should we wonder that the Russians are back in the game? The mighty Americans, in a study which has got leaked out, they say that they don't have 7 days of munitions and missiles to fight in Taiwan, United States of America, and so on, so forth. The story goes on. Look at what's happening in the Middle East. The drone missile complex, leveraged by this, patron proxies framework, Iran and the proxies, a country under sanctions, and they have put into place a system which is challenging the aircraft carriers of the United States, Gerald Ford and Eisenhower. Hamas, Houthis, the Shia militias are more powerful than these aircraft carriers. And why? Because the West has not tended to its military industrial complex, and these other countries have been smart enough to make sure that economic surpluses and technological advantages have been converted into currencies of hard power. American deterrence is being mocked around the world. And so that's really my first question to you, sir. All that I have said, do you think this is an exaggeration? How do you look at the state of the world, the nature of the competition between the two arsenals? Because you were the one who first spoke about this arsenal of democracy. So how do you look at it?
Well, thank you very much, General, for having me here on this fireside chat. And I would like to thank the organizers of this event for making this happen. Very happy to be here. Yeah, arsenal of democracy is a big word. Unfortunately, we thought that it was something that kind of started in 1939, 1940 and ended in 1945 when America decided to create an industrial military complex to aid Europe, specifically France and England, to fight the war against the axis of evil, as they called it. For many of you who might not have read this book, I'll just rattle off some numbers to give you a perspective of what this really meant. President Roosevelt, as General Shukla just said, picked up a phone one day and called the general manager and president of General Motors and said, I need you in Washington tomorrow. And obviously, if the president calls, you have to go. So he went the next day, and President Roosevelt had a meeting with him and said, you're going to create the military industrial complex of the United States. And you can bring in any industry you want, and the government will support it. Similarly, he got hold of a gentleman called Kaiser, who was building transport ships, and got him in the shipbuilding business. Just to cut a long story short, between 1940 and 1944, this military industrial complex, which was created by converting companies like General Motors, who were making cars, Ford, who were making cars, Frigidaire, who were making refrigerators, Kaiser Shipping, who was making merchant navy ships, merchant ships. All these guys got together, and many other companies got together And in 4.5 years, they built 324,000 fighter aircrafts, 141 aircraft carriers, 8 battleships, like the mighty Missouri, you must have seen in the movies, uh, 257,000 artillery guns, 807 cruisers, destroyers, 88,400 tanks, 52 million tons of merchant shipping, 203 submarines. We take 7 years to build one submarine, and 2.4 million army trucks, and many other things. 2.6 million machine guns and all kinds of stuff, all in 4.5 years. And this was given to UK and France, not free. They had to pay for it. They didn't have the money. So very smartly, somebody in Washington created this whole concept of lend and lease. So it was lent to them and later on converted to lease. The point is, this created America's industrial complex. This created America's industry. This created the foundation of the technological excellence that United States today, you can see it happening. So, and everything was Atma Nirbhar. I mean, imagine a company making automobiles was asked to make tanks. So they had to start from scratch, design. Of course, the armed forces helped. They were all working together in this. The government helped. They were all working together. But they made it happen in such a short period of time. And the multiplier effect of Atma Nirbharta, or ability to create your own technology, your own intellectual property, your own knowledge base, your own skill sets, your own talents, this has a dramatic spin-off effect on the rest of the economy. Why is America the richest country in the world today? It's all because of what happened in those 4 years. I'll give you another data point. In 2008, when we had the financial crisis, the famous Lehman Bank went down, and along with that, the whole manufacturing industry around the world, of course, the financial sector collapsed, but the manufacturing industry around the world, including India, took a dip, a very, very bad dip in those days. 2008, the per capita income in the United States was at $44,000. The per capita income in Europe at that time, Europe basically means Germany, France, UK, was also around $42,000 to $44,000 at that time. Now, come to 2022, from 2008, the US per capita income has gone to $77,000 per capita. I mean, or virtually double, little less than double. But Europe has remained exactly where it was, at $44,000, which means net of inflation, Europe has become a lot poorer than what it was in 2008. And what is this doing? We have many factories in Europe, we have many factories in the United States. We are one of India's first multinationals, by the way, creating with our own technology, creating plants all over the world. We are beginning to see a backlash that is beginning to happen. You must have heard the new Prime Minister of Netherlands, the speech that he made just 3 days ago on this. Similarly, the right wing in Germany wants all foreigners to get out of Germany. So there is a huge backlash coming, and the world is dramatically changing. And what General Shukla talked about, all these big politicians talking about wars and what is happening, I think you are going to end up in the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, a lot of mini wars happening all over the place. And the only way we can protect ourselves as a country and progress, because we not only have to protect, we also have to progress to take our country to the Amrit Kal that the Honorable Prime Minister is talking about. We want to be a country which is developed, which has a high GDP, high per capita GDP. is we just need to create our own technology. That's where Atma Nirbhar becomes very important.
Uh, I think now it would be prudent to get the conversation closer home. So to the Chinese. Now, as Colonel Ajay told us earlier in the morning, some very bitter truths are coming out. It is not that the West did not want to escalate. The West didn't have the wherewithal to escalate. A CSI study tells us that, in the bit wars, limited wars, skirmishes, gray zone, the American military is still powerful. But when it comes to the all out war, and this is a CS American study, it says that the Chinese military industrial complex is 5 to 6 times more efficient than the American military industrial complex. 5 to 6 times. That should bother us. The Chinese are pretty close home. The German auto industry, I believe Mr. Scholz had a meeting with the main automakers there, and he said that the Chinese have pushed you out in the EV business. Why don't you start making tanks? I mean, this is the kind of scare that is there in Europe. Now, China is closer home. In the total war, I'm not saying gray zone we'll get by, but in the total war where scale and capacity matters, and if this is the Chinese position, what should we do? Are you expecting a call from the Prime Minister, sir?
I don't think so. But you're very right, General. China's military-industrial complex is running at full gear, and China has, from my understanding, about China is limited. It's not as complete as what you have or what the Ministry of Defense or the armed forces would have. But my understanding is that China has been diligently working on their 25-year plan many years ago. And one of their plan was based on how do we acquire the best technology in every field, whether you beg, borrow, or steal. Mostly it's been stealing. But yeah, they have the technology. A lot of Chinese private sector companies, we have to be very careful. What is a Chinese private sector company? Chinese private sector company is a company that's run by somebody other than the Politburo members. Okay? It's not the private sector that we know of here. And when they get very rich, the CPC takes it over. And that's what happened to Alibaba. That's what has happened to many very powerful companies in China. But they are allowed to create the technology. They are allowed to create wealth. They are allowed to take some of that wealth. But a large portion of that wealth goes to the Communist Party of China. Huawei is another example of a Chinese private sector company in the telecom sector. And telecom sector is not necessarily confined to phones. It's a lot of other technologies that are used in communication and elsewhere, automation and things like that, which have huge amount of use in the military space. So we need to be worried about the Chinese and what they do. From some comparison that we have been able to make about equipments, I believe we are now exporting artillery guns. By the way, you wouldn't believe this, but we are making 6 guns a month, and we are exporting 6 artillery guns a month of 2 different types. One a towed gun and one a mounted gun on a truck. And we are now going to step this up to something like 12 guns a month in a very short period of time. And wherever we go, wherever we are exporting, a couple of countries, they give us a comparison of Chinese equipment because they have Chinese equipment. And the Chinese equipment from a quality perspective is still way down. So we have an advantage. I think we have an advantage that we have better talent in this country. We have better, let's say, industrial capability, but we don't have the scale. We don't have the scale that they have. They have invested huge amounts of money in the scale. Even today, China makes aircrafts, but they still can't make an aircraft engine, just like us. We can't make our own aircraft engine. We've been trying to do this for 30 years now, the famous Kaveri project. You talked about ammunition, General. We are supplying, as a company, we are supplying 30,000 155 NATO ammunitions to Europe per month right now. Of course, great business opportunity when there is war going on, but the other implications that what we need to be worried about as a country are much more grave.
It is also a fact, I'm told, sir. You see, when we raise this point about should India become a defense powerhouse, and people say, what here? Why are we talking of a powerhouse? See, I would like to suggest why it's so important. Today, out of 20 defense corporate majors in the world, 7 are Chinese corporate entities. So now, if we are going to become this Vishwaguru or Viksit Bharat, whatever, and when our trajectories clash, we will also have to clash with this reality of Chinese defense, and that must begin now. But let's now, sir, turn to Ukraine, because many of those lessons from Ukraine could apply from us. So, just to put it briefly, I think somebody rightly described Ukraine as First World War with drones. What it actually means is that while the classical war is, of course, very, very important, the tanks, ammunition, bullets, the squadron company, battles, all that stuff, equally, there is another domain playing out. And that domain is drones, space, AI triangulation, where 250 companies like Helsing, which is the first AI unicorn, are just changing the character of war. In our case, we have to grapple with both. We have to produce the tanks, ammunitions, and all, because we could have stockpile deficiencies if America had so many. We have been victim to this short, swift war business. It turns out that the short, swift war was actually a pack of unreality. So, if we have to prepare for the long war and also make this concurrent transition to the emerging technologies, it is a humongous challenge. How do you look at it, sir?
Very right, General. I mean, couple of hard lessons from what we see happening in the Ukraine war. I'm not on the front, but I'm connected with Ukraine because we've been able to manage to get from Ukraine the technology to produce the turbines for Indian Navy from Zoria, and we are now actually producing them here. And this was all facilitated by the highest level in the Indian government, and of course in the Ukrainian government. But if you look at the Ukraine war, I mean, couple of things are very, very clear. As you said, first of all, it's a kinetic war. So it's not a war that's only fought with UAVs and aircrafts, and there are no aircrafts in that war. It's a kinetic war. It started with tanks and artillery guns rolling in from Russia on the highway into Ukraine. That's how it started. Of course, Ukraine doesn't have the same firepower as the Russians have. So they had to use a lot of innovative, intelligent way of solving this problem. And a couple of things that they have done extremely well is their whole theme is based on power and precision. Now, how do they get power and precision? Power and precision they have been able to get. They were fortunate that they got Elon Musk's Starlink connectivity. That has helped a lot in the Ukraine war, because without connectivity, they would not know where the enemy is and they would not know where they are in the war. So, this whole situational awareness system that they have developed, it's a very unique situational awareness system that Ukraine has developed at a very low cost. It's not even very expensive. I think it's called the Delta Pad platform, if I'm not wrong. And this tells them where the Russian tanks are, where the Russian troops are, where the Ukrainian tanks are, where the Ukrainian troops are, and they are able to use this information, connect it through Starlink, including they are able to use it through telephones, through all kinds of communication channels to target the enemy. So they are able to do a lot with less, because they have been able to create this power and precision.